HR tech, work tech, and investment are transforming the future of work. Are you in the know? Welcome to the Work Tech Podcast. Join host George Larocque for expert insights on the trends, M&A activity, and strategies shaping the workplace. Brought to you by oneworktech.com and the Work Defined Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, it's George Larocque. Welcome back to Work Tech. I'm thrilled about this conversation. I've been getting some early insight into a new product launch, and it's been very exciting for me. And now we finally get to share this conversation with the marketplace, with the Work Tech audience. So this should be a good one. It's all around how individuals find, evaluate, and apply to jobs, which has been getting, disrupted by the minute, along with how companies get those jobs out in front of candidates as well to attract, engage them, evaluate them, get them hired quickly and fairly. So that's the area that this product launch is centered around. And my guests today are Ritu, Mohanka, the CEO, and Bill Fischer, the CTO of Vonq. And Vonq has been leading innovation in this space, in this category, for a while. And I would say quietly leading in the way Vonq has emerged over a couple of decades. And I think they're going to continue to do that just a little more visibly with this announcement. So with that, welcome Ritu, welcome Bill.
Thanks, George. Really great to be here.
Yeah, well, I think you've quietly moved into this leadership position, in the market, and a lot of that has had to do with your go-to-market strategy. But for those who don't know each of you and Vonq, if you could each give a quick intro. Ritu, start with you, and maybe you can give us the elevator description on Vonq.
Absolutely. So a little bit about me, George. I've spent most of my career in HR tech, in people analytics and employee experience, always focused on how do we help organizations hire and retain the very best talent. I joined Vonq about a year ago, actually 13 months. And what really excited me is that whilst Vonq's been building in this space for well over 15 years, the opportunity now is to take all of that foundation and really help scale it into the next phase. I'm a mother of two boys. I always say that's the hardest job I do. I'm based out of London, but I spend a lot of my time in our offices in Rotterdam and Düsseldorf, especially. And just a little bit now about Vonq. At our core, our mission is actually very simple, George. We help organizations deliver candidates. And in terms of our vision, we aspire to be the global platform of choice for candidate delivery. So if I think about, the quietly building, as you said, George, which is absolutely true, we have evolved from a recruitment marketing agency to a recruitment marketing infrastructure platform, I would say, that helps companies get to those relevant candidates, not just applicants, directly into their ATS workflows. We combine job distribution, performance-based advertising, and AI-powered screening, fully embedded inside 50 plus ATSs across Europe and beyond. But we also serve large enterprises and staffing firms directly, while also powering indirect customers, as I said, through our deep ATS integrations. I'll share, I'm sure, a lot about how we've evolved over the years, but I'll pass it over to Bill to introduce himself.
Cool.
Thank you. George, it's good to be here.
Great to have you.
So I've been at HR Tech 17 years now. So I started, I started directly in HR Tech and then pivoted out and then pivoted back in. So built a semantic search tech company, and we were mining social media profiles. So had a company that did that, built a lot of AI ML tools just to mine these profiles. It turned into a social sourcing platform that seemed to be the best commercial use for it. And then that company was bought by Dice, and then went to Dice, kind of ran the R&D group there for a little bit. And then Vonq. So I've been at Vonq about 5 years. So Ritu mentioned we started kind of as more of I don't want to say a traditional agency, because we've always had kind of an AI media recommender. And I've kind of just worked to help build out a platform. So, and just kind of like complete, we now have kind of a full stack solution for top of the funnel talent acquisition. So from writing a job description to screening and assessment.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack based on both of your intros, and let's start at a high level. And I can't think of any two people that, given your backgrounds and given what you're doing at Vonq, to address this. But specifically around Vonq, you talked about the product suite that you now bring to the market. Where do you sit in the HR tech landscape? How should customers, anyone in the space think about Vonq as far as not from a tech stack perspective, but also that sort of market landscape? How should they view you?
Maybe I'll take a stab and then Bill, please do chime in. The way I see it is that we've really evolved from a recruitment agency with some tech into a infrastructure recruitment marketing platform. And if I think about the whole recruitment marketing, it has gotten so crowded. And honestly, there's a lot of noise in this space. Many providers are promising better outcomes, but if you look under the hood, most of them are still solving for very narrow slices of the funnel, often either media buying or form of CRM or engagement. Where Vonq is different and perhaps really well positioned, or uniquely positioned rather, is that we focused on being deeply embedded in that actual recruiter workflow. We're not sitting off the side as another tool recruiters have to log into. We integrated natively inside over, as I said, third time, 50 ATS platforms. That means when a recruiter creates a job, they can activate distribution, they can buy performance-based advertising, and they can and increasingly AI-powered screening, which we'll talk a little bit about, all right there inside the ATS with one click. And that embedded infrastructure layer allows us to do two things that most others can't. First, immediate reach and adoption. Because we're embedded with instantly available for over 100,000 employers via our ATS partnerships, without any need for separate onboarding, integrations, or change management. And that creates scale very quickly. Second, we're able to layer on more advanced solutions, like we'll discuss today, our newest launch of CPA Plus and Agentic AI directly into these existing flows. So we're not forcing new behaviors. We're simply upgrading recruit experience by helping them receive pre-screened, pre-qualified sometimes candidates instead of unfiltered application volume. That's where I think we sit in the HR tech space. But Bill, over to you. I may have missed a few things here.
No, I don't have much to add. So you mentioned we're quiet, and I would say we're not quiet in Europe, where we work with direct enterprise customers, but we are quiet in the US. We'd love to be louder, but it's a big country.
Yeah.
It's tough to be loud efficiently. And so for the US market, we work indirectly. So as Ritu mentioned, we have these, you could almost think of it as a store within the ATS. Mm-hmm. And why that's key, and it's something I was challenged with as an entrepreneur in the space, was understanding how important it was to be embedded in the workflow of the recruiter. And so even just asking a recruiter open up another tab is a heavy lift. And so and then integrating with an ATS is a heavy lift. And so we solve that by having this embedded software. You could think of it as a widget in the ATS. It reads native to the ATS. And so you've created your job in the ATS. You can then immediately start a talent attraction program. So you can immediately buy some media against that ad. We grab the information from the job description, we hand it off to the publisher, we manage that transaction. We have an AI media recommender that'll just kind of look at the job, come up with a media plan for that. And then you can just execute that with a single click. But because we have this native integration, this widget, it enables us to add new products to the ATS without having to go through that integration process.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I wanted to start here is because I think and when I say quiet, that's a very good thing, right? It speaks to the embedded nature of what you're doing in the US, this sort of seamlessness, but also there are plenty of noisy, vendors with a lot of hype that aren't delivering necessarily on the value. And I think it's almost the opposite here. There's a ton of value. And when I see a demonstration of, the, ATSs, and I know I'm seeing Vonq,
Hey there, I'm Tim Boris, host of the Working Well podcast, where business strategy meets human sustainability. If you're an executive, a leader, or changemaker ready to ditch burnout, build thriving teams, and drive real results, this is your next must listen. Tune in on the Work Defined Network or at timboris.com/podcast.
But it's not, I'm not seeing your brand. And I think there are probably many recruiters who are using Vonq right now who may not actually be aware that it's Vonq that they're interfacing with when they're getting the ad out and through that marketplace. And I think that has become, in this day and age, and let's move to the launch now, as we move into this world of agentic AI, the platforms are so critical to this shift, and that position that you're in has become an incredibly strategic asset for you, being such a tight partner for the ATSs, for their customers, and having the ability for the customer at the end of the day to release these kinds of features that you're about to tell us about and you've already gone through, this the security evaluation, you're in the platform that's approved and sanctioned, by whether it's a small business or a large enterprise, by the folks that are concerned about these things. So you're able to move the customer very quickly into this new paradigm, but it's your story to tell. So tell us about, you mentioned CPA Plus. Tell us about it. What does it mean, to the market, and what is it?
I'll take a stab again, Bill, but please chime in as well. So if you think about the traditional CPA cost per application model, they've been around for years, George, and on the surface, they sound great. You only pay for applications. But in reality, they've struggled to scale because they've still been mostly about volume over quality. You pay for every completed application, but there's no guarantee that those applications are actually qualified, relevant, or even interested in the role beyond the clicking apply. That's where recruiters get stuck. They still spend huge amounts of time screening, filtering, and chasing down unqualified or uninterested candidates. So while CPA shifts the pricing model, it doesn't really fix that fundamental recruiter workload problem. With CPA Plus, which is our newest launch, we're addressing that head on by introducing our Agentic AI into the CPA model itself. The AI kicks in as soon as a candidate applies. It pre-screens applicants in real time based on role-specific criteria for that specific job. It dynamically collects missing data points from candidates with feedback loops open. It runs a structured screening interview via the AI agent, and it scores the candidates across multiple soft skills and transferable skills and qualification vectors, generating a full candidate dossier directly into the ATS. So instead of recruiters getting a pile of raw applicants or clicks, they get a short list of pre-screened, ranked candidates who've been qualified or screened upfront. And that's a huge efficiency gain, reducing recruiter workload, speeding up hiring cycles, and improving interview to hire ratios. And more importantly, the ROI on the media spend. So whilst we often say it's not just performance-based media buying, it's performance-based hiring. You're paying for outcomes, not just traffic. And because we're fully embedded inside the ATS workflow, there's no additional operational lift to adopt CPA Plus. It simply fits into the way recruiters already work with Vonq or our distribution platform.
Yeah. And that, to be able to deliver that, and, you mentioned the 50 ATSs, across your partners, and it's that existing integration layer and marketplace that you've built that really allows you to do that. I think it's an incredible advantage for your customers to be able to try this, to move forward with this. Talk about, what the recruiter or the employer gets back. I think your pricing model is really key in how there's a combination of what you're providing and then how you're delivering it from a pricing model perspective that makes this different than a lot of the other attempts at CPA that we've seen over the years. Is that something you can dig into for us?
Sure, I'll let Bill speak. Otherwise, people will be fed up of hearing my voice.
Never. never. So happy to talk through. So so ROI is really important. It is really difficult to do because we have to, for a CPA product, you need to balance the economic requirements of the publishers, yeah,
Hmm.
as well as the right ROI for a hiring company. And when we evaluated other CPA products, they kind of failed because they would either let down the publisher or let down the hiring company. And so we had to use a couple tricks to sort of make that ROI work. And so one of them is when you think about it, when companies work with us, for every dollar they spend to attract candidates, they spend about $2 screening them. And so we built the screening into our media product. So you get an instant ROI lift from that. And so what that enables us to do is to charge a little more for each application, but because they're getting that screening, because they're getting the assessment, because they're not paying just for a started apply, it's a completed apply, because they're paying for an apply where the candidate has also done a little interview, done a little chat, and they're getting all the assessment built in. So that really helps kind of on the hiring company side just to get a really good ROI. And that enables us to be more generous with our publishers because publishers are reluctant because they take all the risk in the CPA product. So the recruiter, they're in the ATS, they decide they want to promote a job. They will then go to our marketplace. They'll select the CPA Plus product. They click a button. We then take that job. We then send it out to publishers. We send a bounty to each of those publishers. They send the candidates to our candidate journey. Then they get paid every time a candidate completes that journey. So and then the hiring companies just pay for the dossiers that they receive. So they get the raw CV, but they also just get the interview transcript, they get the chat, they get our summary, they get our scoring, and so
Yeah.
that's it's kind of our little twist on
Yeah.
CPA.
I think it's a great twist. Especially, can you expand a little bit just so that folks really understand the value that you're putting into this from an agentic perspective? We hear agentic and we hear agents, and you hit them all pretty quickly there. This is an actual agent. Some of it is more digital from a chat perspective, but some of it is actual voice, right? If I understand it correctly, what I've seen that's interfacing with the candidate. Here we go. Here we go.
Sure. So we've been working with agents for a while. So we introduced our first agent products a little more than a year ago. And then we've also been using large language models to build a collection of tools that are unique to recruitment. So parsing tools, assessment tools, interviewing tools. And so the agentic part is when you give we'll just call it an agent. You give an agent a mission, and then from there, and then you give them tools, then you give them some guardrails, you give them some best practices. But so the agent, when they're given that mission, they then break it into tasks. They think about which tool they need to use for each task. They then conduct that task. They then package up all the information they've collected, hand it to another agent that then runs the same sort of process. And so what that means for our product is when somebody applies for a job, they meet one of our intake agents that'll just sort of look at their application, look at the job description, do a gap analysis, try to figure out what additional information it needs to make them a viable candidate. It collects that. It then hands them off to an interview agent. So the interview agent will then look at what are some areas the company might want some more information about. If there was still some missing information and we want some more details, it'll then conduct that interview, score that, and then hand it over to a group assessment agent. And then the group assessment agent will come up with a plan. So the group assessment agent is told, here's a job description. You're going to get 1,000 applications. You need to have a uniform kind of like assessment matrix that you apply the data against all the candidates. And then ultimately it turns into a dossier like what I put in on the screen. So the candidate will just sort of flow through that process. And then our AI builds a dossier, which will say, yeah, this is how that candidate kind of looks compared to their peer candidates. There's an executive summary. It's evaluated kind of 15 different vectors and scored each one. You can again, see that interview transcript if you want. You can see the chat data. But it's a real time savers for a recruiter to, one, just to be able to see where a candidate sits within their peers. So if you have a candidate, it has a really high score, you want to move quickly on those because those are the ones who are going to get hired quickly. So we work with Adecco, and Adecco, when they get a job, that same job is often sent to several other staffing firms, and so they need to be first. And so with this process, somebody applies for a job within 20 minutes. They've met all of our agents, they've had a conversation, our agents packaged up this dossier. We then send it to the recruiter at Adecco. And then if the score is strong, they send it right to the hiring company. So a process that took them 7 to 10 days now takes about 20 minutes. And it's a game changer for staffing firms.
And I may just add one more point, George. If you think about traditional automation or conversational AI, that usually relies on decision trees or pre-configured scripts. That can work, of course, but it often requires a lot of upfront setup, configuration, maintenance from recruiters or admins. And honestly, most teams don't have the time or resources to manage that. And this is where we are rather unique with our agentic AI, where once we give the mission to the agent, they coordinate amongst themselves to get the work done and the mission accomplished, rather than having to preset each time for every customer or every order. And I think that's what we mean by scaling this across organization or across ATSs.
Yeah. That's really powerful. One of the big topics, anytime we're talking about automation and especially around, pre-screening candidates, that comes up is, transparency, fairness, explainability. How have you addressed that within this new product?
This is a hugely important topic, and honestly, one that's only going to get more critical as AI adoption scales across hiring. We've been very intentional about how we've built whether the CPA Plus or our agentic AI capabilities to fully align with the sort of the emerging regulatory landscape, especially with the EU AI Act, which is now in sharp focus. And of course, EU is always more stringent. So I think US often borrows from what EU comes up with in terms of legislations around data protection and whatnot. At a very simple level, we don't believe you can scale AI in hiring unless it's both transparent and explainable for recruiters, for candidates, and for regulators. So first, we build, exactly as Bill's showing, we built our AI stack on Microsoft Azure OpenAI. Don't ask me the details. Bill can tell you that. So we have full control over where data is processed, stored, and how models are governed, all within that GDPR compliant environments. Second, every candidate scoring decision is fully auditable and explainable. Exactly as Bill's currently hovering around, you can see why a candidate's got a score for every single vector that's been scored against. So recruiters can exactly see which factors contributed into a candidate's score, and candidates themselves receive real-time feedback on where they sit in the process. So we're not making black box decisions where no one knows why someone progressed or didn't. Third, we've designed our models to focus on skills-based matching and objective qualification criteria, which of course helps reduce bias by grounding the screening into role-specific requirements rather than subjective signals that might creep into traditional screening processes. And, that was a huge learning Bill alluded to when we did the proof of concepts and now working with Adecco and several other customers. We really sort of very, very carefully moved from sort of the past historical ways of working, matching, to scoring, which is explainable, transparent, and sort of fair. But again, Bill, I don't know if you wanted to cover anything else that I haven't mentioned around fairness, transparency.
No, I'll just say we got lucky. So as somebody who likes to build products, having a lot of regulation is scary. So typically it's more fun to build in an unregulated environment. But being in Europe, having the EU AI Act front of mind for all of our customers, having that in place before we built this specific product, we just built it ground up to be compliant with the EU AI Act, which has been great. Just because that framework, we see some of that in New York City, we see some of that in Colorado. I'm sure we're going to see it in a lot of other locations. That it just requires, again, it's this transparent and explainability that Ritu talked about. And then again, from like a product development perspective, it's also helped our QA. So a lot of other companies are using a large language model, and they'll just say, here's a job description, here's a candidate. Is it a strong match? And they'll go, this is a gold match, this is a silver match, this is a bronze match, but you don't really know why. You don't really know why. And it's difficult to QA if it's a black box. And so one of the things we did initially is we would have a job description, we'd have a CV. We would say, this job description, come up with 100 vectors that you could evaluate candidates against this job description. Then we'd give it a CV. And then we could then just kind of go through each of those 100 vectors and see how good a job the large language model did evaluating each of those. And so we then use that just to do kind of like a bottom-up score of each candidate. So it's a very different process. No, I think it's just a better experience for our recruiters as well. When they can really just understand why this is a strong candidate, why. So sometimes they might have a different opinion on it, but at least they can go, well, you know what, we said Dutch is a requirement. It's not really a requirement.
Yeah.
It allows them to
I
recalibrate.
think everybody wins. Candidates win with more engagement, with more context. Employers win, everything you just outlined, and also your partners. It's important that as this market is shifting into this agentic world, that platforms need to choose partners that are going to hold themselves to a high standard when it comes to, especially in hiring, when it comes to fairness and explainability, transparency. So speaking of partners, you're launching with a few, ready to go out of the box, some exciting partners. You want to talk about who those partners are and what that will mean?
Bill, do you want to speak to that? I don't want to steal your thunder.
I was just taking up a slide just to let you. Well, we're really excited about our launch partners for the product. So it's a really innovative product, but it's also a product that's using brand new tech. So bringing Agentic AI to actual workflows, to live deployments, you put it to work. As Ritu mentioned, like distribution is really important. Through our Happy ATS network, we get access to about 100,000. More than 100,000. So hiring companies, and our launch partners are, so we're working with the Employ group. So we've launched in the Jazz HR, we've launched it in Lever. Our publisher, our marquee publishing partner is LinkedIn. So this is allowing hiring companies to buy applications from LinkedIn. So it's a self-service CPA product with our agentic screening, agentic assessment with LinkedIn. And so that's been a really exciting partnership for us. One, just because they deliver really great quality candidates. Two, they can deliver across every geography and almost every geography/industry. So they're really good. So again, for a self-service product, you can put any job into the ATS. So it could be healthcare in a small city. It could be a PHP developer in a large, or anything in between. LinkedIn can provide a good source of quality candidates for it. So it's been we're very excited about this. Very excited about this launch.
Yeah. As we mentioned, you're integrated into 50 other ATSs. I'm sure there are more coming that we can't necessarily talk about just yet. But the LinkedIn integration is really exciting, given the vast candidate pool. Just thinking about the friction that gets removed out of the process from a recruiter's perspective, not just having access, but going through this initial screening process. That's really exciting. Anything else that you want to share about your integrations or partners looking forward?
I'll probably just say one more thing. So you're right. So we did launch with LinkedIn as our first publisher partner, but we do have plans very soon to roll out a other publishers network, a CPA Plus product as well. That's in the works right now and soon to be launched. I think if I'm saying it correctly, it's either July, sort of late July, I should say, rather than early July, according to Bill. So that's definitely going to be one. And then, of course, we're also looking at other LinkedIn premium products with CPA Plus. And then finally, as you mentioned, George, so of course we're live with 2 ATSs right now, but we have a rather aggressive strategy to launch across many other ATSs, not just in North America, but also in Europe and across the world. So that's also in the works. And the next one probably will be late this month that we'll launch the next partner.
Yep. Well, I could digging into this product more and more, but in the sake of time, I want to give you one more, sort of stepping back, a high level question. And you can take this however you'd like, whether it's thinking about what's going to happen with the market or what's going to happen with recruiting. How do you see, we're at this moment where we're starting to see these exciting capabilities offered out to HR leaders, talent acquisition leaders, recruiters. How do you see this all changing? I know we could also this could be a topic for a whole conversation, but I know you're thinking about this. How do you think the TA professionals out there should be thinking about this change right now and what it means in the market?
Wow, that's a great question. I probably first speak a little bit about just sort of the market right now. Like most players in this space right now, we're seeing a mixed market. On the one hand, hiring demand is still a bit cautious in certain segments, especially in large enterprises and some global markets where decision cycles have stretched beyond means. Budgets are being scrutinized more carefully, and many companies are being a bit more deliberate about adopting new technology. That's sort of the current landscape from where I sit. But on the other hand, we're also seeing very strong momentum around AI-driven hiring solutions. For the sake, if nothing else, is for efficiency gains, especially as leaders start to realize that this isn't just another trend. It's fundamentally about recruiter capacity, long-term efficiency, and enabling recruiters to do their jobs well. In particular, Bill alluded to earlier, staffing firms, retail, healthcare, high-volume hiring segments are driving a lot of early adoption because they feel the pressure on recruiter bandwidth most acutely. And I think that's where CPA Plus or other versions of CPA Plus and Agentic AI are resonating fastest. And as we head into sort of the remainder of 2025, gosh, it's already June, and 2026, I personally expect this market will move from early AI experimentation into much broader mainstream adoption, but with a very strong focus on responsible, explainable AI that fits inside the existing workflows. Companies don't want to rip and replace what's already working. They want AI that helps their recruiters work faster, smarter, and more effectively inside their current systems, their current flow of work. And that's exactly where we're positioned and where we're doubling down as we scale. So today we say 50 ATSs. My vision is by the end of the year, we'll say 75 ATSs. By early next year, I'll say 100 ATS and beyond. So that's sort of my personal vision on where we're taking Vonq.
Cool. That's a great answer. Bill?
Not too much to add. Not too much to add. So the AI systems, again, under the EU AI Act, can't be decisioning. So they can provide advice, but they can't make a decision. And so again, that framework I think has been really helpful for us when we think about building a product, because they forced us to build true recruiter enablement products. So for better or for worse, HR function has often been seen as a cost center. It really should be seen as an area of strategic importance, but sometimes businesses do sometimes see it as a cost center. And so there's a lot of pressure for more efficiency within the HR function. And we really worked hard to build a set of tools that just make the life of a recruiter more fun. We enhance the productivity of recruiters. We've automated lots of the admin type tasks, which allow recruiters to spend more time with quality candidates and some of the other more people-oriented parts of their jobs. And then in terms of demand, because candidates are also using these AI tools, it's almost becoming a table stakes requirement for recruiters to have AI tools, just because there are AI candidates being generated, there are AI applications being generated. So there's a huge volume of new applications that are really flooding the system, and recruiters are throwing their hands up, just saying like, we need, we just need better tools just to help screen and process these.
Yeah. Great answers from both of you. And I will, let's check back in a few months and see how we're doing on, the progress in the market, but with those ATSs and the adoption around these tools. I think you both hit on some really things that I would agree with, and I'd love to, we can keep it going and see how we're doing in 3 to 6 months. With that said, how can folks learn more about Vonq? What's the best way to learn more about this exciting release?
The easiest place, of course, always is to start with our website, vonq.com. But if you don't follow Bill Fischer 10 on 10, let's follow Bill Fischer. And there's a lot of content on our website. Also follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we share a lot of real-time updates, particularly with our newest product launches. You'll get a good sense of how we're evolving in the market week to week.
Okay, great. Well, I will link to all of that in the show notes. If you're watching live, we'll have it in the post. If you're catching this later on YouTube or at WorkTech, it'll be there for you as well. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Ritu. It was a pleasure, exciting conversation. And thanks for telling your story here at WorkTech.
Thanks for having us, George.
Yeah, thanks, George.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the WorkTech podcast. Visit us at oneworktech.com and find out why WorkTech is considered the most trusted source of market intelligence and strategic advice for WorkTech. Subscribe to the WorkTech YouTube channel for video episodes and exclusive content. And be sure to check out the entire Work Defined podcast network at wrkdefined.com for more podcasts on the world of work.